I don't know. You ready for an intimate detail?
Yes, I want. Yes.
My first date with Betsy, we went and got our bellies pierced together.
Really?
Yeah.
I love this.
And I'm just looking down. I'm checking. I've got like a little sort of fake opal hanging out at my navel right now.
Okay.
But you've got me inspired. I could get a big bit of bling that looks like a $20,000 diamond for
Oh, yeah.
$20. The work week may be over, but the economy, she never takes time off. I'm Justin Wolfers. This is Off the Clock, and I am joined once again by superstar economics journalist Stacey Vanek Smith, the econ journalist with the mostest to unwind the economic news.
What an introduction. Thank you, Justin. I'm very glad to be back. I always love talking economics of the week with you. I'm a columnist at Bloomberg Business Week, co-host of the podcast Everybody's Business, and thrilled to be here.
It's always great to have you, Stacey. So the folks at home know that compliment was deep because I spend an enormous quantity of my week talking to journalists. But there's only one journalist I look forward to talking to each week, and it's you, Stacey. So our job today, we're going to pick through the week's headlines and tell folks at home what they ought to be concerned about, what they can safely ignore. And you and I, because you're a sunny optimist, we're going to look for some silver linings along the way. So, wow, what a week. We've had two humongous data releases since we last talked. The latest inflation numbers came out, and we also learned how the job market was doing in July. So we're going to talk about both of those. And I think you've got something a little different for us to talk about after that.
Yes, I am thrilled to be talking with you because I've been working on a big feature for Business Week about the diamond industry, which has gotten really thrown for a loop because of the rise of lab-grown diamonds. It's just prices have really tanked. And I'm so excited to talk about this with you. As it turns out, it's one of the oldest questions in economics, posed by Adam Smith himself.
More than that, I mean, this sounds like a classic supply shock. If you're one of my Econ 101 students, study up because this might be on the final.
Oh, my gosh. Are you going to put off-the-clock items on the final?
Absolutely.
I think that would help. That could really be a big listenership driver.
I think you're about to say that could really drive traffic to the final, but actually you have to be in my class to take the final. And surprisingly enough, people are not queuing up out the front. We got one more thing.
That's not true. I have been to your class, and it was packed. There were people standing in the back in a big arena. I remember being very
There were lions,
impressed.
Tigers. There was quite the display.
Bulls and bears.
It's all about that gladiatorial combat, which we're going to end on. We got another round of chart versus chart, and I got to tell you, Stacey, I've got you this week.
Oh, you think your chart is better than my chart? Because I was just thinking that I felt a little bad for you because my chart is so good. I felt like maybe I was a little unfair in my chart supremacy.
We're going to get into it. We're going to get into the news, but I will just tease by saying I think I have unlocked and explained the extraordinary ennui that folks are feeling about the US economy. And Stacey, you may not know this, that's French.
That's good to know. I'll add it to my list of words. All right, Justin. First up, we got to talk about inflation. Just one of the biggest economic forces in our lives, one of the biggest talking points, the mover of elections. The inflation report came in. It was basically what people expected. Headline inflation was 3.4%. Core inflation, which is inflation except when you take out food and oil prices, energy prices, those tend to be more volatile. That is at 2.5%. The Fed wants us to have a target rate of 2%, meaning it wants prices to be rising about, on average, 2% a year. And so looking at inflation, before we get into my question about inflation, I wanted to get your take. What did you think when you looked at these numbers? They weren't sort of super great or super terrible?
This is what passes for good news in my life these days, Stacey, which is I looked at them and I was like, terrific. Something bad didn't happen today.
Well,
Let me back
Yeah.
up and explain. Like, something bad is happening. Prices are rising at 3.4%. That's an uncomfortable rate. People are finding it hard to afford stuff. A really important point is that prices are rising faster than wages. So the average American paycheck buys less today than it did a year ago. So that's all quite painful. The reason I wasn't pained is we economists, of course, nerd out. We have expectations coming into it. And this was pretty much what everyone had expected. There's, I'm going to blather another minute if I may.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's blather. Um, you're so kind. Um,
Are you kidding? This is my job. I love asking people about the economy, and I've got a captive economist. So yes,
wow.
blather
Okay.
on.
I mean, if you really cared, you'd ask me about my feelings.
What were your feelings about inflation?
It's uh, uncertainty,
Hmm.
fear, a little bit of optimism. And so that's the bundle of feelings I do want to talk about. Look, there's two basic stories you could tell about inflation. One is it rose during COVID, it started coming down back to normal. That got disrupted by tariffs and the war in Iran, but it still seems like it might be on a path all the way back to 2%. So that's the happy, good news version of the story. There's another story which could also be true, which is that inflation's at 3.5% right now. It's been above the Fed's target now for 5 years. People keep telling me it's coming down, but it keeps being too high. I'm not sure I believe you anymore. Wow, inflation is back to haunt us. And the reason I want to tell those two stories is not to create artificial conflict between one view and the other, but actually to say that this month's number did very little to resolve that conflict. It wasn't unusually high. There were glimmers of good news in there. Um, there's some sense in which it looks like tariffs may have finished pushing the price level up, or they're somewhat along the way to having finished pushing the price level up. And so that means there'll be no more inflation coming from prices, even as the pain of tariffs remains with us. The Strait of Hormuz remains an incredible unknown. And everyone's sort of holding their breath because you've got to add one other thing, which is handsome Kevin Walsh, the Fed chair, will not tell us what he thinks about these numbers. You know, there are some men who are the strong silent type who aren't prepared to talk about their feelings, and that's handsome Kevin.
I like this because yes, we've had. I mean, but that is a more how things used to be under Greenspan. I know there were economics papers written about the color of Greenspan's tie and how it
Mhm.
correlated to what he was going to do. He would sometimes change interest rates without telling anybody, with no press conference, and people would have to like traders would sort of figure it out. He
Can I
was
give you two
very
amazing
elusive.
Greenspan stories? There was a
Yes. Oh my
conference
gosh.
once
I will take all the Greenspan stories.
okay,
Yes.
by the way, Greenspan, I guess we have to call him Old Alan. Well,
Well, he is
he's no longer with us, I believe.
rest in peace. That's right.
Yes. I met Alan several times in his career.
Hmm.
Actually once edited one of his papers, which was a little bit scary, but that's an aside.
Wow.
There was some point at which he responded to a journalist, if you think you understand what I was saying, then you must have misheard. He was so famous for being opaque that, in fact, so he married Andrea Mitchell, who was an anchor on CNN, very glamorous. The story goes that when he asked her to marry him, she didn't understand what he was saying the first 3 times.
Was it like the color of his tie that gave him away? Really? He proposed and she didn't. What did he say?
If you remember the Greenspan era, he probably mumbled something like, given the state of monetary conditions and recent railroad shipments, I suggest a
I've
strategic
looked over the
merger of
data,
yes, I
considered all
suggest a
the elements.
strategic merger that may reduce average household size in the United States. And
Oh my gosh.
she didn't hear it, apparently. And, like good old Alan, he went back and he got down and he said it again. And on the third time, she understood him. So, handsome Kevin, strong, silent type. Alan Greenspan was much more the purposefully incoherent type.
Now, let me ask you this, Justin, because I feel like so Bernanke started this era of kind of extreme transparency.
Yes.
They call it forward guidance, but sort of telling the markets what they're thinking, what they're looking at, where they're headed. This continued through the great Janet Yellen, through the great Jerome Powell. Um, but there is, I think, quite an interesting school of thought as to why go back to being more or less less transparent, less transparency, less forward guidance. And I do think it's worth talking about because I do want to ask you about it. I feel like there is an idea that too much transparency creates a lot of risk because when the markets think they know what the Fed's going to do, then they get a little complacent and then they start spending money and taking risks. This is like a whole school of thought. And that maybe the Fed is sort of coddling the markets and trying too hard to reassure everybody, which can make it less nimble. It's like, well, we already said we weren't going to do this, so now we have to do what we said, instead of saying, you know what, things have changed. I've heard this blamed partially for the fact it took the Federal Reserve a while to start raising interest rates when inflation did start to tick up, and that maybe if there wasn't such a commitment to forward guidance, that interest rates would have been raised sooner and we would have had less of a battle with inflation.
This is also tricky. The idea that the market has emotions and that someone's cuddling it or coddling it.
Is the market anything but emotions? That is my question.
Let's not you and I start a hedge fund based on that view. Um, so, look, Ben Bernanke had a very simple view. If you believe that inflation expectations matter, then you want to tell and you're going to do the right thing, tell people what you're going to do. If I'm going to do the right thing, I want to tell people that so they believe I'm going to do the right thing so they can make good choices given that I'm going to do the right thing. It's a very clear, I think, totally sensible worldview. Bernanke talked about it using the language of cooperative games. That if I can persuade you and you can persuade me, we can end up in a virtuous cycle of me saying what's going to happen and you believing me. Walsh has a range of different views, some of which are more and less coherent. And actually, he's been very, very much in the news if you really are deep into the wonka sphere, which is the response has been quite negative. Let me give the positive case, the strong case for what I think Walsh might be saying. And I think it's actually sociological and psychological more than economic, which is if you tell people, I think it's pretty likely I'm going to hike rates in September, you start to feel that you're attached to that view. And so you might be unwilling to change your mind. And in fact, there's good evidence that economists change their mind too rarely, that having made a mistake last quarter, they make the same mistake next quarter.
John Maynard Keynes said, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do? And Fisher very famously did not change his mind. Anyway, yes, this is an old.
Absolutely. And so what you want to do is give yourself, you want to be the most like Keynes you can be. You want to be open to facts, constantly changing your mind, constantly revising. And if you're telling people one view, you might feel like you got to keep telling the same story. I think there's some validity to that. A different story is Walsh keeps saying all that markets do is try to predict what the Fed's going to do. So if I stop telling them, markets will respond to the economy instead of the Fed. And therefore, as the Fed chairman, I can listen to markets to figure out what I ought to do. Now, what's incoherent about that is even if you don't tell markets what the Fed is going to do, the Fed sets the short-term interest rate today, tomorrow, the next day, and so on. And so therefore, when you try to price like a 30-day loan, that's actually that's 30 separate overnight loans, the rate on which is set by the Fed today, tomorrow, the next day, the day after, and so on. So whether you like it or not, people in bond markets are always thinking about what the Fed's doing. In the past, they were thinking what the Fed told them to think. Now they're guessing. And when folks guess, they make a bunch of mistakes. So this feels quite incoherent. And I think there really is going to be a lot of pressure on handsome Kevin over the next few weeks to make it clear what it is he's thinking. And then the second thing is he comes into the Fed and he says, I'm going to get inflation down. And as far as I can tell, it seems that he thinks he's going to do it by sheer charm and good looks because he hasn't done anything. And markets are less charmed by his boyish good looks and they actually want to see him do something. And so the question really is, do you mean it, handsome Kevin?
Yes, I think the Torsten Slok put it that this would be tantamount to someone saying, I'm going to be taking us from New York to LA without saying when, how, or how much the ticket would cost, which I thought was a very funny analogy. But I do kind of want to push back, Justin, because is there value in the uncertainty? Because the uncertainty does communicate risk. So places will hold on to their money a little bit more, maybe keep a little bit m- out of the money supply, which can help with inflation. And also, is this a good way for Warsh to cope with his boss? Well, actually, we are his boss, but
We are.
President Trump, who appointed him and who's putting a ton of pressure on him, the less he says, is that a potentially a way for him to be guarding Fed independence? Whereas if he's really open, really transparent, that just creates more of a target for maybe the White House or the administration to kind of meddle. Whereas if it's a little bit more closed off, it creates a little bit of ground cover.
That's a fascinating idea. It's not one I've heard. Um, that if he keeps the White House guessing, then the White House can't be calling him to say, do this, do that. And the only way to keep the White House guessing is to keep the rest of us guessing. Um, and I mean, if this is part of a political strategy to guard Fed independence, I'm all in on it. Let me explain, though, Jay Powell and Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen's approach,
Yeah.
because they took a very different one, which is they said, let's write down what the right thing to do is. Then let's do the right thing and let's explain why that was the right thing. And what that did is it created enormous goodwill in Congress, who actually oversee the Fed on our behalf. It actually meant that when Trump tried to fire Fed Chair Jay Powell, there were senators who were willing to stand up and say, no, you can't do this. So I generally tend to, your idea is a fascinating one. And the problem with it is we're only going to know if it was right in 20 years' time when someone writes a tell-all memoir.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I have any advice for our audience about doing business, I do think the old idea of do the right thing and then be seen to do the right thing and explain why it's the right thing often feels like a pretty good way of doing business.
One final question on this. Do you think the worry is because obviously the markets did not like Warsh's speech, and I've heard most of the people I have spoken with of all political persuasions and different jobs were quite critical of it. Or is Do you think the worry is that he seemed to be hedging too much? Like someone told me that he seemed to not understand the link between inflation and interest rates. And then someone else said it just seemed like he was kind of saying or seeming to indicate that he was not necessarily going to do what was right for the economy. He might do what was right for his career. And there was a lot of suspicion around that, as there has been since his appointment. There's a lot of worry. Is he going to safeguard Fed independence, or is he going to do just what the president wants?
Yeah, my guess is that he understands the link between interest rates and inflation, but
Yeah. Yeah.
there is quite a lot of how he's described his new way of doing business. Look, the idea that we shouldn't tell you what we think is kind of weird, right? Like, I pay your salary, handsome Kevin. You're meant to be accountable, and you're not going to tell me what you're doing or why. It feels a bit iffy. And so actually, let me bring you in on that. You just said you talked to a lot of the market economists on Wall Street. I've been sufficiently puzzled by some of this that I've been sending out emails to my mates who are very serious monetary economists, folks who study this sort of stuff, saying, do you get what's going on? And the truth is, in those circles, people are kind of huddling around the water cooler saying, I'm not quite sure what's happening here. These are very, very
Hmm.
smart people. So that's is he just white teeth and a terrific smile? Or has he been, and is the problem that he's been auditioning for this role for so long that he's forgotten why he wanted it and what Fed chairs are going to do? I wish the bloke well, and I hope everything is on the right side of this. But
I think we all do.
he hasn't done anything to bring insiders along or outsiders. And I think that's he's made his own life a lot harder. Now, there was inflation, the Fed, handsome Kevin straight teeth. I know the next thing you care deeply about is the labor market.
Yes. The labor market, this is very interesting. So unemployment ticked down a little bit. but there was also a seeming like flashing red signal that labor force participation is down, meaning that the unemployment rate might be down because people are just giving up, dropping out of the workforce for various reasons. A lot of the people dropping out of the workforce are women, which could indicate that maybe because of lack of working from home or the rising price of childcare are dropping out of the workforce. Maybe not that they want to leave the workforce, but that they feel like they have to or financially pressured to. At the same time, not only did the economy not add jobs in June, it lost like tens of thousands of jobs, which is, I was really concerned when I saw this. But what about you, Justin? What did you think when you saw this?
Mate, I was really concerned. Um,
Okay.
but I do think there's two sides, and it's probably really bad journalism if I explain that there's two sides, but it's good economics. So we're going to go with that. Um, look, the economists in the know had sort of expected us to gain 80,000 jobs. We lost 23,000 jobs. So that's about 100,000 shortfall. That's enough that you like hold your breath and you
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, one of the reasons we'd expected reasonably good job growth is the previous 2 months had been pretty good, but subsequently we received
Also, the
more.
World Cup, right? People thought, oh, there's all these temporary jobs from the World Cup. This is going to juice the numbers.
Yeah, that was, well, I always thought kind of goofy. That's just a few more soccer games. And, in Michigan, we think it's not a football stadium unless it's got 120,000 people in it. And none of these were serious football games by that measure. But yeah, there was a story that there'd been a run up because of the World Cup and so on. But actually, when we got more survey information, some of the firms that hadn't sent their forms in on time, we learned actually the last 2 months hadn't been very strong either. So they were actually about 100,000 jobs below where we thought we were. So you add up those two. This month disappointed by 100,000. History created 100,000 fewer jobs. We were 200,000 weaker than we had anticipated. And that's the sort of moment you realize it's time to adjust my story. And just to help folks at home understand why this one report has such a big effect, this is one of the most reliable economic indicators, and it's also one of the most timely. So in a year's time, we'll know a lot about what just happened, but we care a lot right now about how the economy is doing right now. And this report seemed to suggest nowhere near as well as we had hoped. See any glimmers of hope in there, though, Stacey?
I mean, I think the glimmer of hope for me is that the unemployment rate is still historically quite low. I
Yes.
mean, this is still, if you looked at the data, if you showed a space alien the data, they would say, wow, this is a really strong job market.
Yeah.
Also, there's a lot of promise. I know there's a lot of threat, but there's a lot of promise from AI, the growth it might provide, the new jobs that it might create. Um, and also, like, I believe in American. I just feel like
I love that for
Americans
you. Go
are
on, say that with
hardworking
a straight
people.
face. You can do it. Like straight down the line.
I do. I believe in this country. I feel like it's the first line of The Godfather. That's why I was smiling. I believe in America. I do. I believe it's
What's
like
your
an
position on
entrepreneurial.
freedom?
Well, you know, this is a tough moment in a lot of ways, but I do believe in like the entrepreneurial spirit of America. I feel like it's a hardworking country. Um, I think there are definitely reasons to be optimistic. Also, the U.S. economy is a total powerhouse right now. The
Mhm.
problem is that powerhouse accessible to people? Is the American dream, is the economy going to take us all along with it, or is it going to grow and leave us behind?
Are you setting
Um,
this up so your chart looks good in a few minutes' time?
oh, my chart doesn't need any help, Justin, I
Oh,
assure
that's
you.
good because I think that was the perfect preamble for the chart I'm gonna
Oh,
drop
really?
in just 15 minutes, and I'm so excited by that. I'm gonna share with your
Sometimes
optimism.
people who talk a big game don't have as much game to show, but I assume that is not you.
No, it's definitely not me. I don't know if
Is
anyway,
chart smack talk a thing? Because I think that's what's happening here.
not only is it a thing, it's a kink. Um, wait, is Stacey's dad watching again?
No, oh my God.
Yeah, no, I'm going red, just
At the
thinking
next
about it.
at the next econ
I
conference,
mean, I'm going red
this
because it's
needs
the
to be.
truth. I have that kink. I'm all
I
in for the perfect chart.
I think if there were at an economics conference, if there was something on like chart wars, it would be a crowded room.
I am also going to tell you at economics conferences, I do not use the word kink.
That's wise.
That's a workplace. This is a workplace too, and I'm actually, well, enough.
This is off the clock.
We are off the clock. We're two mates having a chat, and sometimes there's some
That's
economic,
right.
and sometimes Stacey just launches into kink talk.
I did not bring that word
You
up. That was
raised jobs
100% your. I did contribute.
a little bit.
That's
Okay.
all I will. That's
All
all
right.
I'll admit to.
Okay. Look, I just want to come and hit, something important, which is you gave one note of optimism, which is the unemployment rate's low. And it really
Yes.
is. I want to give a second one, which is the unemployment rate is roughly stable. And here I'm not looking month to month. I mean, if you look over the last 2 years, you could say it rose a bit, could say it fell a bit. It's roughly stable. That's really interesting because job growth, which is what we often talk about, has fallen enormously. But the unemployment rate, which is actually, I think, at a deep level, what we care about, can folks who want work find it, has been roughly stable. How do you reconcile those two things? I think that the reality is let me introduce word for the day, break-even jobs growth. How many jobs do we have to create each month just to create new work for the difference between the number of new workers who are born and the number of old workers who retire? Because America's growing. That's part of why you believe in America. Always growing. And that answer used to be we had to create 150,000 jobs a month just to keep the unemployment rate
Oh.
stable. But over the past couple of years, roughly speaking, we've been creating, I'm going to make it up, 50,000 jobs a month. Far, far fewer. But the unemployment rates remain stable. So what's happening? Well, I think what's happening actually is fairly straightforward, which is a dramatic and very sudden decline in immigration. So America was always growing,
Ah.
but suddenly we're not. Now, for the immigrants and for those of us who love them or those of us who are them, that's very bad news. But if we're having low jobs numbers, that they're happening at the exact moment and possibly are caused by the fact that we have very low employment population growth, that says that the lower job growth numbers we're seeing might well be enough. Like pretty lousy numbers might be fine for an economy whose population is not growing very quick.
Also, though, aren't more people maybe retiring right now because a lot of the American population is older than younger because
Hmm.
our whatever.
Yep.
Is it possible that we're going to need to start replacing more jobs? That it's going to grow from 50,000?
Well, so that's another question again, which is what's the right rate of population growth for the United States? The
Yeah.
thing is, if we go to zero, which we very nearly have, one of the engines of growth for small businesses is the number of customers in your market keeps growing. So of course you can sell more stuff. The president's cut that off. Now, I can't say we never had national debate or discussion about that. The president was very clear about his goals coming into the election that he really didn't care for immigrants. He claimed it was only
Yeah.
illegal immigrants, but he's also done a lot to cut off legal forms of immigration as well, made it harder for students to come and study in the United States, restricted H-1B visas, on and on the list goes. So it didn't turn out to be just about that. But I do feel like the discussion that we didn't have, and the research, to be fair, that the Republican Party or Donald Trump didn't do is what are the macroeconomic consequences on the rest of us from a sudden sharp drop off in immigration. They didn't do the research. So right now, you and I are living through that experiment. Hey, Stacey,
Yeah.
fingers crossed. I hope it works out. I mean, I actually also hope we let immigrants back in. I like immigrants.
Me too. Some of my favorite people are immigrants.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure you're talking about me.
I am talking about you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So you
Yes.
did some amazing reporting this week, and you're going to teach me about something I've been fascinated about diamonds.
Diamonds. So this is a market. I am so excited to talk with you about this because basically during the pandemic, lab grown diamonds really took off. I mean, diamonds have been some of the most valuable products on earth for centuries. Um, the prices have just really maintained for years and years and years. It was one of the most secure investments you could make. Enter the lab grown diamond. It was invented in the 50s, the process, but they didn't really get to sort of gem quality diamonds until maybe the last 10 or 20 years. And then it was still pretty expensive to grow them. But the technology got cheaper and cheaper. And then during the pandemic, people weren't really going into stores anymore. And there were all these ads. I don't know if you got these ads, but like for all these sparkly diamonds. And people started buying these diamond studs for their Zoom calls. In fact,
Good.
I'm wearing them right now. So,
You must be well paid.
well, just wait. So if you go on Walmart, which is where these are from,
You bought
you can.
Walmart diamonds.
I bought Walmart diamonds.
That
These
is
are these are real diamonds.
democratization with a capital D, isn't it? That's better than
Yeah.
the Costco casket.
So if these were real diamonds,
They are
would
real.
probably cost. Well, if these were natural diamonds, mined diamonds,
Right.
they'd probably cost like probably between $6,000 and $10,000. Guess
Mhm.
how much these cost on Walmart's site?
$2,000.
$10.
$10.
$10. Yeah.
A $6,000 diamond sells for
Yep.
$10.
Sells for $10. Yes.
Holy!
They can grow diamonds 100 at a time in these huge machines they have in India and China. And the only materials in them are graphite, because it's just carbon. Diamonds are just carbon. It's like graphite and salt, essentially.
Okay, I'm going to tell you
And
a little secret about me.
yeah.
I don't know. You ready for an intimate detail?
Yes, I want. Yes.
My first date with Betsy, we went and got our bellies pierced together.
Really?
Yeah.
I love this.
And I'm just looking down. I'm checking. I've got like a little sort of fake opal hanging out at my navel right now.
Okay.
But you've got me inspired. I could get a big bit of bling that looks like a $20,000 diamond for $20.
Yes. I mean, essentially.
I'm going to look amazing at the beach. People are going to be like, look at you, moneybags.
Oh, yes. I mean, you can get basically on the wholesale market, lab-grown diamonds are profitable. Now, Walmart's a little bit of a different case, but on the wholesale market, a lab-grown diamond is profitable at $15 a carat right now. So, and I talked with one of a scientist. His name is Petrus Bothma. He built one of the machines that grows diamonds for this company called Eterniva, which grows diamonds using carbon from the ashes of loved ones. It's like an end-of-life company, so you can get your loved one's ashes turned into a diamond that you can wear.
No.
Yes, they went on Shark Tank in 2019.
Like, I like your earrings, and you'll be like, oh, that's Uncle Joe.
Yes.
I don't know how I feel about that.
But here's what
you know what we
he
could do? Let's
What?
start a business. We could buy up dead celebrities and turn them into
Oh.
diamonds.
Yeah, we could. We could even take live celebrities, because you could just use some hair or whatever.
Really?
If we, yeah.
Well, stay tuned, folks. No wonder you're
Yes.
going to have them send a little video. I'm going to make diamonds out of J-Lo.
Wait, you could do special platypus diamonds.
I
You could
am
take like
not
a little bit of
going
hair
to
from a platypus
No.
and then grow diamonds.
I'm
No?
not going to punish a platypus. I'm pretty sure that'd be illegal in Australia, and if it's not, it should be.
Taking a little hair and growing a platypus diamond?
I don't know. I'm much more
I think
like
the
the idea
people-
of grinding up dead celebrities, but maybe I don't have enough respect for Hollywood. If you were going to
Anyway,
wear a diamond
yes.
made out of a dead celebrity, who would it be?
Any time or place?
Yep.
Hmm.
Oh, I've got.
What about you? You go first
Yeah.
then.
I'm going to call this one John F. Kennedy, and over here I'm going to put
Oh.
Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, nice. I don't know. That's too tough. I need to get back to you on that. I have like a million things coming into my head.
We've got so much economics to get to. Sorry for distracting you.
That's true. No, it's true. We have some economics to get to. So I talked with this diamond analyst. His name is Idan Golan. He is in Israel. He's been tracking the diamond markets forever. And this is what he told me about this moment.
It has to do with the story. And diamonds had a fantastic story for literally centuries. And you're right that in recent years, and really it's a very recent development, we're seeing it's sort of like, did you ever see a kid riding a bicycle and then all of a sudden, they're kind of playing around with the front wheel, they're wobbling and they just fly off? That's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
what happened to the natural diamond industry. And I'm giving that example because it's really a cultural change.
So I thought this was fascinating. And one of the things he said was, this has happened over and over again in history. Like salt used to be one of the most precious substances on earth. There was a moment when black pepper, was more expensive than gold. Paper, silk, saffron, things that we can like go to the local CVS and buy have gone from incredibly precious things to something you can buy at Walmart for $10. And I wanted to ask you about this because apparently this is one of the oldest questions in economics. This is where I got so
It is.
excited. And I was like, I got to talk to Justin about this because Adam Smith brought this up in his
Mm-hmm.
seminal economics work, The Wealth of Nations. And it was called the diamond water paradox.
Yeah.
And he basically said, why do humans value diamonds more than water? Water is free. We need it to survive. Diamonds don't really have a use. And we are willing to pay all of this money for them.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? I love this.
Yeah. Welcome to week 2 of Economics 101 at the University of Michigan. I teach the diamond water paradox directly, and you're exactly
You
right.
do?
Like,
Oh,
absolutely.
this is so great.
And I start by saying, hey, guys, water, it kind of keeps you alive. It's amazing. And the
Yes.
price is really low. Diamonds, they're shiny. Who cares about, well, not shiny. What do? They glisten? They sparkle. Sparkle.
They
They're
sparkle.
sparkly. They have a couple of industrial uses, but they sparkle. So one thing keeps you alive, the other thing sparkles. Which one should have the high price? And then the answer, of course, is it's actually a couple of things. There's a couple of things that are worth noticing. So one, that's talking about how much do you benefit from it. You benefit a lot from water. You don't benefit much from a diamond. Although I've heard some Sheilas benefit a lot from a diamond. They say they're important. I'm not sure.
Some would say a girl's best friend.
Some would. And so you're like, but notice what we're doing there. We're only talking about how much a buyer values something. There's two sides to a market. The other side is supply. Here's the thing about water. If you go outside, particularly in Seattle, and you look up, water just comes down and splashes on your face. It's called rain.
Yeah.
There's a river runs through the middle of Ann Arbor. You can get as much water as you want out of that. We're surrounded by water. Water is everywhere. It's abundant, whereas diamonds are really hard to find. It used to be. They're buried underground. You got to chisel them out, all that stuff. So the first lesson there is don't just think about how much a buyer values something. Think about the seller and how difficult it is for the seller to produce. Second lesson is one of the important things that comes out of economics is this idea of thinking at the margin about one more. So here's when we think about buyer's valuation. If I were to offer you 1 gallon of water per week, and it's the first gallon, you'd say, oh, Justin, I'm so thirsty. I definitely need it. I'll give you $10,000 for it. Let's say I've given you 200 gallons of water. And now I'm thinking, hey, Stacey, if I were to sell you a 201st gallon of water, what would you use it for?
Yeah, that's too much water for me in my New York apartment.
You might water a plant. You might have an extra long shower. It's just not something you value very much. So the point is, some water is intensely valuable. The last gallon is not very valuable. This, by the way, also helps explain, when you go into a concert and they sell bottled water at $8 a bottle?
Oh, yes.
You're so hot, you're so dry, you're so thirsty, that first bottle is worth it. But you'd never buy 5 of them and you'd never water your plant with that water because the 5th bottle is not that valuable. So this is a claim that we should always be thinking at the margin. Does that get to the heart of the paradox for you?
Here is my lingering question from this. So the diamond industry, I spoke with De Beers and stuff. Basically, they're panicking.
Yep.
Diamond prices have fallen on the global market, just tumbled.
Yep.
And they're trying to basically tell a news story that natural diamonds, mined diamonds, have this connection to the earth, this connection to community. They're these ancient stones. They're older than dinosaurs. basically tell a story that this is more valuable than that, even though they look the same. And this got me thinking about why we value what we value. So there's
Yeah.
supply and demand, but where's the initial demand come from for something that you don't need?
Right. So diamonds,
Because I feel like
diamonds.
this shapes our world in all kinds of ways, like how much one person's work is worth versus another person's of a different gender or a different skin color, or even, if we value, one of the things that I remember hearing once was that we are not pricing things properly. That's why we have a climate crisis. So that like a hamburger should cost $150 because we should be pricing in all the things.
Well, I hear burritos
Um,
are now $20.
This is true, they are, in New York. But anyway, so I mean, this really feels like it gets at the heart of why we value what we value, why we demand what we demand. Because
Right.
if there's supply, even if there's a small supply of something, if there's no demand, it's not valuable. But why, what is it about diamonds that makes there be a demand for diamonds?
Right.
I feel like this shapes our world, our lives,
Yep.
so many aspects of this.
I love
I
it.
want to hear about that.
Okay. So first of all, diamonds have an industrial use. Which is,
Yes.
they're the strongest thing, and so you can get through
Drill
anything.
bits.
Drill bits. You want your
Yes.
diamond drill bits. And now that I know they're cheap, I'm going to go and buy a dozen of them right now. And I
Oh,
might
yeah.
even drill straight through my navel a second time so that I can hang bigger diamonds off it.
It's a
So
great
that
move.
industrial use is about use value. And most things that we buy and sell, it's fundamentally how useful is it? How much do I enjoy it? How delicious is it? Things like that. Um, by the way, funny aside, if you really want to upset monetary nut jobs, and you know the kinds of folks, you sometimes see them handing out leaflets in a major train station, um, you say, why does gold have any value? It's just a yellow metal. And
That's
there are
right.
all these gold bugs who believe that the economy would be perfect if only our money were gold rather than pieces of paper. They say pieces of paper are just a social construct. When I give you dollars, pieces of paper, you think they're valuable. You think they're valuable because everyone else thinks they're valuable. Well, the same
It
goes.
could just as easily be the Goldwater paradox.
Absolutely. And the paradox, the social norm there is if everyone else thinks gold is valuable, then it's valuable to you because you can buy valuable things with it. So
It's the story.
yes. So now, actually, let's talk about the story of diamonds. There's more economics here than you could possibly ever imagine. So if you go back to the 20s, actually, diamond engagement rings were not a very big deal. And then De Beers, the big diamond manufacturer, for a long time was thought of as it's one of the few examples of a monopoly. It's no longer a monopoly. But De Beers were like, well, we create sparkly rocks. And for some reason, we can sell them for drills, but we can't sell them to many other people. We would like more people to buy sparkly rocks. And so then they advertised diamonds are forever. Now, that became the norm around
It's a
about, I
good
believe it's the
story.
30s. Your great grandmother probably didn't have a diamond engagement ring, but your
Probably
mother
not.
almost certainly did.
She did.
Um, so what happened in between? Well, we have to go back to the 30s when we had a very different view of the acceptability of premarital sex. I knew that it would end up there. Um, so here was the problem, which is couples would get intimate, they would get engaged, they planned to marry. And the norm at the time, as far as historians can tell, and this, by the way, comes from work by Margaret Brennig at Notre Dame, the norm at the time was that once I'd asked you to marry me, we would start sleeping together. We wouldn't tell everyone because we didn't officially believe in premarital sex, but we would.
It was happening.
Once you're engaged, you're allowed to spend time with each other without other people present. Let's just put it that way. What then happened, though, is if you got engaged to someone and then the bloke pulled out, the Sheila would be seen as damaged goods. It would be inferred she was no longer a virgin. These are not my values. This was just a statement of how things worked at the time, right? And so the women have this economic problem, which is if you get engaged with someone, there's this period between engagement and wedding day where all of a sudden all the power goes to the bloke because if he walks out, you're damaged, your outside option just got a whole lot worse.
So it's like an insurance policy.
Right. So De Beers comes along and essentially says, if you want to take this, when you go and rent a canoe, they sometimes ask you to put down a deposit.
Or leave your driver's license.
Yeah. The engagement ring was a deposit, which is you're going to go through with this. And if not, you're going to lose a large amount of money. And I will have enough wealth to continue on even if I'm understood to be damaged goods in the marriage market. Look, there's a lot there, and I don't want to dwell too much on the norms of the time, but actually that's a story that comes back to what you said, which is value in this case is very much the demand for diamonds was very much socially constructed.
Yes.
Once people believed diamonds were valuable, then a young woman whose reputation was on the line would ask for a deposit. She would want it in a form that was socially acceptable and incredibly valuable. And that's why, and so this research claims that's why I believe if you buy a diamond ring, it's meant to be 2 months of income. Basically, that's the damages. The other thing that happened, sorry, I forgot one thing. It used to be the case that if you engaged a bloke and he didn't go through the wedding, that you could sue for damages. So women left at the altar could sue because they were seen as damaged.
Oh, like reputational, sort of like suing for slander or libel or something.
Yes. That lawsuit went away. And so there was a law change. And that is when these women instead needed a deposit, a substitute, because the law would no longer recognize the damages. And so what they did is they demanded the deposit so they could take the damages in the form of a ring.
This is fascinating. I did not know this part. I do know that De Beers kind of democratized the supply of diamonds. So
it democratized demand as
rare.
well. Like De Beers has a lot of diamonds, and it's like you all need them. Don't get married without one.
And it also made the supply like all over, every state, most cities in the country have a store that sells diamonds, which was not the case before.
Yep.
So they were plentiful, but now they're too plentiful.
So great.
And now the diamond industry is struggling.
I just want to take a moment on this and then we'll move on. I bet that the folks you talked to were very defensive and they thought this was who were from the old school diamond mining, and they thought this was very bad for the economy.
They definitely were talking about, there are economies like in Botswana where diamonds are just a huge part. Botswana owns a 15% stake in De Beers.
Wow.
And so it's a big part of a lot of economies, and a lot of mines have closed because they just can't make the math work anymore.
Right. I want to convince you that that's good news, not bad news. Right. So the world now has more sparkles because sparkles got so cheap you can buy them for $10 from Walmart. So we definitely think they look great. You do look amazing. So the world has more sparkles, and no one had to go down a mine, which is a dark, dangerous, difficult place to be.
Yes.
So
but it is tough for the people who were going down mines already.
Right. So this is a great meta example of an economic debate that happens all the time. If we're talking about the movement from the old world to the new world, the long run is we have more sparkles and no one with dirty jobs. So as a whole, the world is better off. But in the interim, there were some blokes who, and Sheila's probably, who had to feed their families by going down the mines, and that work has disappeared. And that transition cost for them is very, very real.
Yeah.
The thing, though, is our political debates often give away for folks who lose in the short run from a policy to really get active. They rarely give us a way for those of us who enjoy more sparkles to be heard. I
feel like the people who enjoy more sparkles usually win. But I do feel like, this is the big thing with the AI jobs transition, right? Where they're like, these jobs that get lost to AI will be replaced by better jobs. And it's like, yeah, but what about, people who lose their jobs in the moment and they are trained to do this job that just got replaced? And in the words of John Maynard Keynes, in the long run, we're all dead. So if it's an economic policy that hurts you, you're going to rail against it. And did I delight in my $10 Walmart diamonds? Yes, I think they're beautiful. I really like wearing them around. But would I look somebody in the face and be like, you shouldn't have a job, so I only have to pay $10 for these diamonds? Absolutely not.
So that AI analogy is really powerful, and let's push it one level further. So you can think about those grown diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, as essentially the AI of diamonds, which is you have an enormous shock to supply. Now we can produce diamonds for almost nothing. Well, what does AI do? Now we can produce, and I know people quibble with the
research number. Yeah.
Cognitive work. That's the term I'm going to use. People will
Yes.
quibble with it, but now the price of cognitive work has fallen pretty much to zero. And so the disruptions you're seeing in the diamond market are in some sense related to the disruptions that AI is going to cause in yours and my labor market. I say that because you and I both do cognitive work. So there's now lab-grown Stacey's and lab-grown Justins, which are not as authentic as the real thing,
No.
that have fewer piercings than the real thing.
But also take less vacation.
Yeah, and can get the work done. And so in the future, we're all lab-grown diamonds.
I love that. Anyway, yes, I want to talk about this more in the future because it is just, I think, just the foundation of part of the foundation of economics.
Great. And so the other thing is you're talking about things that sparkle, things that make people happy.
Yes.
Can you think of anything else that sparkles, that makes people happy, that involves an inner beauty?
Charts?
Charts. You bet.
Yes.
Charts. Talk about sparkles.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you a chart story just to get you a little psyched before the competition begins.
Okay.
Did you know one of the best charts I ever made was in a paper I wrote about income and happiness. And about 5 or 10 years ago, The Economist sold T-shirts where you could buy a T-shirt with my graph on it.
Did you get royalties? I can't believe that's the first question that came into my mind. Yes, that is awesome.
The first thing I did was bought two versions of the shirt, one in Betsy's size, one in mine. I didn't even think about monetizing it. I'm not a very good economist.
Well, or you saw the value in it is not just straight up cash, but also influence. There's value in that too. You just have a more
sometimes wear that shirt
sense of value.
And people don't say,
so cool.
Is that the Stevenson and Wolfers chart? And I wish they would. Because, the source line on a chart, it's very small font. But anyway, I just wanted you to know that my charts have been on a T-shirt. Where's the best place your charts have been, Stacey?
I'm so glad you asked this. Well, first of all, it must be said, because I try to be an honorable person. We had a chart competition last time, chart versus chart. We both brought, I think, strong charts and asked people to vote. And Justin, I want to officially acknowledge that you won handily. You won handily, 57 to 43 on YouTube, 54 to 46 on Substack. It was an electoral and popular victory.
Stacey, I want to acknowledge your outstanding performance because both of those polls were on websites that end in @JustinWolfers or Platypus Economics. It's a little bit like going to, when you fill out a poll at Fox News and for some reason the Republicans always win. In this story, I'm Donald Trump.
I was actually quite pleased at my strong showing, but we did have stakes in this bet. One of them, I was supposed to get a platypus pillow, which I will not be getting, but you asked for peanut butter cups.
Cannot wait.
And they're coming if you still want peanut butter cups. I also found out that there are several types of chocolate platypus candies, if that is interesting.
Well, how about we make that the stakes this time?
Okay.
Or did you have another bet you wanted in mind?
I still want the pillow.
Okay, fine. My pillow, I've actually just found a vendor to make platypus pillows. I'm not releasing them to the public yet, but for you would have the first ever.
I get like a prototype platypus pillow. That's fantastic.
Only if that made you feel better, and only if you promise not to turn it into diamonds.
Promise.
Okay.
I promise.
All right.
No diamond. I already have enough diamonds.
And I'm going to say to my platypus pals, I want you to be absolutely straight down the line and vote for me for no reason other than the sheer dazzling quality of my charts. Or vote for Stacey.
And I would like to say no
if
pity
she deserves
votes.
it.
I don't want pity votes.
No, give Stacey the pity votes, but let her know it's a pity vote.
No.
Like, give her the vote and write in the comments because Stacey needs the help.
Oh, no,
Okay.
absolutely not. I am too proud for a pity pillow. I do not want a pity pillow.
Okay. Are we going to get a chart out of you or have you given up?
Oh, we're going to get a chart out of me. So here's the thing. I try to learn from past experiences. And one of the things that came up was your chart was very beautiful last time. People kept comparing it to a Rothko. you put the art in chart. And my chart was just from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which,
I love those
while
people.
extremely informative and valuable, was not as artistic as it could be. So, Justin, are you ready to see my chart?
I'm ready.
All right, here it is.
Wow.
This is my
Wow.
chart.
Wow.
Here
Wow.
is my interpretation of our current economic moment, which really does feel like a Jackson Pollock painting. The data is so confusing. It is so hard to find a form or a narrative inside of this because you've got, really positive news. You've got amazing earnings. You've got a very low unemployment rate. You've got consumer spending, I know it ticked down a little bit, but pretty solid. You've got all this promise and all these companies. On the other side, you've got really dismal hiring rates. You've got wages not keeping up with inflation. You've got women dropping out of the workforce, people dropping out of the workforce. You've got bad vibes. You've got sentiment near all-time lows. This is our economy right now in an artistic chart. I give you the Jackson Pollock economy.
That is incredible. I feel like you bent the rules. And I feel like you baited me into talking about feelings earlier, and this one gets all the feelings on the page. I like to think of this as Peter Navarro's brain. Just a big mess. This is his understanding of the economy. It looks like a conspiracy theory.
It's beautiful chaos, much like our economy itself.
Okay, I think
I was not going to win on numbers or economics, so I leaned into my unfair advantage, which is narrative.
Oh, wow. Comparative literature major for the win.
All right, I want to see your chart.
Stacey, I play by the rules because that's how I roll, and that's why this economy doesn't work for people like me.
I see.
What I wanted to do was understand the affordability crisis, because one of the weird things about the affordability crisis is you might think affordability is how much stuff you can afford. And so you might think that therefore that's related to your income relative to prices, which in reality has been going up. But this is from my colleagues at the University of Michigan, the Michigan Survey of Consumers. And the purple line is the share of the American population who believe that over the next couple of years, prices are going to grow faster than their incomes. And you see that right now, that's 71%, an all-time high. I also want to draw the eye back to the early 1980s, because the early 1980s was a period when we had double-digit inflation. The idea that your income could keep up with double-digit inflation might seem absurd, but people were still more confident than it would. And so what this chart is it's a story of people's beliefs that, yes, in the past we've had inflation, but people believe they'd get the catch up. The thing that's different here is we have inflation and they don't think they're going to get the catch up. In fact, only 8% of Americans believe that their income will grow faster than prices, even as I'm willing to bet that for most Americans, the reality is that their incomes will grow faster than prices. So I think of this as actually the data inside your Jackson Pollock. This is the upset. And unlike your chart, I'm not trying to sell my chart at all, but unlike your chart, mine has an historical narrative. It says we've seen inflation before. It's never been that bad. America's never been the same. Unlike your chart, mine is utterly, thoroughly, completely artisanal. I had to pull the data myself. I had to hand type the numbers, and I had to choose the color.
I don't think you can argue that your chart is more artisanal than mine. Mine is a literal borrowed work of art. Here's my question, though, for you, Justin, about your chart.
Borrowed. All right.
Here's my question for you, Justin. Let's say what you say is true. You said something really interesting in there. You said, all these people feel like prices are going to rise faster than their income.
Yeah.
And you said, even though in most cases it probably won't, how important are the feelings versus the facts with something like inflation? Let's say that for most of these people, prices actually don't rise faster than their wages.
Yep.
But they believe that it will.
Yep.
What is the impact in there?
Yep. So almost everyone I talk to would say to me, what is the political impact? But you, Stacey, and the thing I love about you is you care about the economics rather than seeing everything through a horse race lens. And I deeply my person. No, I have so many people who want to talk about horse races. Let's talk about the economy and people's lives. So I'm going to switch to the horse race. And the reason is I find your question just too hard to answer. I just want to acknowledge that. I want to say it's a
Oh,
brilliant
okay.
question. I don't know the answer. We're about to run an experiment in it. Now I can put on my political hat and say, if people go to the polls believing the prices are going to rise faster than incomes, they're going to be angry. And they're going to be angry at incumbents. And one of the other facts about my chart is actually this shift has been particularly sharp among Republicans over recent months. They had believed that
Wow.
President Trump was going to boost their incomes and bring inflation down. And we're at a moment right now where they're starting to give up on that.
Well, something else is occurring to me, which is that one of the things I find so fascinating, I love moments I love the messiness of economics a lot of times. And one of the messy things about inflation is that one of the necessary ingredients for an inflationary spiral is people thinking that there will be an inflationary spiral. Like people believing prices will go up is a thing that pushes prices up.
Yeah,
So it's more than just worries. I feel like it's a real concrete concern when people's feelings are bad. You know what?
absolutely.
It can create a reality.
Look, there's a theme that's run through today's episode. You were talking about what determines the price of diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
And that itself is socially constructed. You're talking now about the belief in inflation creating the reality of inflation. I think you're really making the case that there is a big space for a comparative literature major in economics. I'm not teasing you.
100%.
I'm not
I
teasing you.
agree. I appreciate
I'm
this
proud
very
of your
much.
comparative literature degree, and you put the psychology and the humanity back front and center in economics where it belongs, because at the end of the day, we are all people. Okay, folks, just like last time, Stacey and I need you to weigh in on whose chart was better. If you choose Stacey's because you think that Jackson Pollock is data visualization, vote for Stacey. And if you think it's important that a chart shows data, you make your own choices. What I want you to
I
do,
think if you appreciate a good metaphor and if you
I
think
do
that this
appreciate
moment is so complicated it can't be summed up in a chart,
that.
I think I win the vote.
Your comp lit teachers will be so proud of you
I think so.
as they hear you bring that narrative back in. But what we want you to do at home is weigh in the comments. We're going to post a poll on YouTube, post a poll on Substack. Remember, Stacey really wants pity votes. That's the most important. Which chart do you like best? Which do you think is best for understanding our economy right now? And so, folks, we've gone on a bit, but it's so fun to talk to Stacey about economics. This has
It's
been
really
Off
fun.
the Clock, the economics podcast in which we slow down, review the week that was, introduce Jackson Pollock, talk about psychology and feelings, and try to sort out what really matters. Stacey's going to be back with me for our next installment in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, Substack, or your favorite podcast app. And if you come away feeling a little smarter, then what I'm going to ask you to do is tell a mate, because we want to make this community bigger and more meaningful. In the meantime, folks, stay curious.